Hey guys, hope you can all hear me okay. Can you hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Because I've got this message saying that I've got an unsupported audio driver. I don't know what that means. I've never had that problem before. So you can all hear me. All right, that's good. The problem might arise when we start playing the clips then. So we'll just have to wait and see. Okay, so this isn't going to be another 4-hour marathon. I have never done a live stream as long as I did last night. I was very tired. I don't know how people do like 7, 8, 9 hours of live streams. It's too much. It's just too much. So this 2 hours max, absolute max. All right. So we're going to pick up from where we left off yesterday. So we went through the morning's testimony. Now I'm not gonna trouble you with the afternoon's testimony because the audio for the third person was so bad I couldn't hear it at all. Very few news channels have actually got it on because the audio was so bad. And then the fourth witness, so all these 4 witnesses that the defense called were all about DNA. And that fourth witness was no better than the ones that we heard on the live last night. So I'm not even going to play them. I'm just not. What I want to focus on is what has actually been ruled. And the judge has denied a stay in proceedings. One of the things that the defense wanted was basically a delay tactic. They've already had a 37-day stay in proceedings already. And the prosecution want that rescinded. They want the trial to go ahead as scheduled on October the 2nd, with jury selection starting the week before. And as it stands right now, that's what is happening. That's what the judge has said is going to happen. Now, there's obviously time for the defense to try it on again, I guess, and try for another delay. They can do that. They can do that right the way up to jury selection if they so wished. So let's wait and see. But as it currently stands, there is no delay in the proceedings. So Friday's hearing, attorney spent most of the day discussing DNA evidence used to identify Kohberger. Oh, dear God, dear God. Arguably, one of the strongest pieces of evidence in the state's case against Kohberger is the DNA on the knife sheath. Yep. Okay. And we talked at length yesterday about the differences between SNP testing, which is used in investigative genetic genealogy, and STR testing, short tandem repeat testing, which is used for law enforcement for the CODIS database, for paternity testing, etc., etc. And I can go over that again. I think I've got the most simple way to explain the difference, if anybody wants me to go over it again, because I know that a lot of people have been so confused. And the defense is just trying to pull the wool over everyone's eyes, including the judge, in my opinion. It's just a complete, it's become a complete ball ache. It really has. So I can go over that again if you want. And I've got one slide, that's all, which will hopefully clear it up. But yeah, I definitely want to start with the fact that the prosecutors are just not messing about. So at this point, Kohberger has not waived his right to a speedy trial, but the court the court previously granted the defence a 37-day stay on the case. The prosecution, however, have asked for this stay to be rescinded in fear for setting a precedent of allowing defendants delays without having to waive their right to a speedy trial. So this is where we're at the moment. So one person says, yes, please, for the DNA. So I'll do that after. Let's just see who's in the house, first of all. Princess, Emma, Erin, Sherry, Holly, Irene, Miss Pumba, Emily, Susie, Steph, Dorothy, Pen 1010, Mason, Kerry, and a bunch of people. All right. The longer it goes on, yeah. I mean, to be fair, you know, if it goes ahead in October, this has been pretty swift. You know, he was arrested the latter end of December, just before New Year's Eve. He spent his New Year's Eve in custody, which is great. So less than 10 months, only really 9 months, isn't it? So that'd be good. That'd be good if they got it done and dusted. You know, look at some of the trials we've had recently. Letitia Staug, Laurie Vallow. How long did Laurie Vallow, how long did that take? Still waiting for Chad Daybell, aren't we? So it's good that the judge is trying to keep everyone on track. What's this? The guy that you showed in your live yesterday is the top of the top, apparently. The top of the top of what? The top of the top of what? So the first witness, Steve Mercer. Well, he's not an expert in genetics or genealogy. He's an attorney. So, and he was waffling on about Maryland and the District of Columbia. So clearly where he's got expertise, he's not in Idaho. Or else he'd be talking about Idaho, wouldn't he? Where the actual case is set. So, exactly. Of all the humans in the world, he's the only one with that DNA profile. Driving in the proximity of the crime, during and after, but it's not him. Yeah. He has to be the most unluckiest person in the world for, you know, just to have happened to gone for a drive in that exact area to he's turned his phone off at exactly the same time as the murders happened. And his DNA profile is exactly the same as that of the killers. Who'd have thought? With 27 zeros. Yeah, 27 zeros. A lawyer that has knowledge of DNA. Well, he wasn't very good at explaining himself, and most particularly explaining himself in relation to this case. Just very unlucky. You're right, Twisted. Very unlucky. Very unlucky. The unluckiest man in the world. What's this? The prosecution better get more on the ball with discovery, or they're causing all kinds of problems for appeals. Yeah, but actually, if you read the court documentation and you listen to what the prosecution have said, rather than what some news channels have said and what some conspiracy theorists have said, they have turned over every single piece of discovery that A, they legally need to, and B, that they have in their possession. They are still waiting for one report. So they're still waiting for it. So they can't turn over what they haven't got. And they can't work on the premise of if, buts, and maybes. If ifs and buts were candy and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. We would. But they can't work on ifs and buts. So the defense bringing these four witnesses to the stand and letting them waffle and waffle and waffle about hypotheticals, about hypothetically how you would do genealogy and how you would create a family tree, and going into completely irrelevant details, as the second woman did, she bored me to tears because none of what she said was directly relevant to the case. So, no. You're wrong, Run the World. I don't know who you've been listening to. Read the court documents. Go and read them and listen to what they actually say. They have turned over all the discovery that A, they are legally obliged to, and B, that they have in their possession. They can't turn over things that the defense hypothetically say that might have happened, such as, oh, there might have been a mistake here and there might have been a mistake here. I'm sorry, the law, the world doesn't work that way. You can't work in hypotheticals without proving. If the defense can prove that certain mistakes have been made, then yes, the prosecution have got a duty of care to the case and to the great state of Idaho to rectify that. But there has been no evidence whatsoever, apart from the if, buts, and maybes that the defense have put forward. They are just stalling, they are making noise, and people are believing them. So, no, the judge is on the ball. The judge knows what time it is. The judge has probably seen all of these tactics before. So, there we go. Right, I've got a 2-minute clip, and then I've got a, hold on a minute. This is an hour, but I'm only going to play one section of it, right? So don't worry, we're not going to be here listening to terrible audio. Just want to listen to a little bit of what the defense says about the witnesses that they called and the rationale why they called them. Because I can't cope with more of the same. Judge isn't going to be bamboozled. He's not. He's not. He knows what time it is. I like him. I do. He seems very down to earth. I think I'm going to enjoy watching this trial, if not for the absolutely terrible defense. I just know how that's going to go. Some of the witnesses that they're going to call, they're going to be as bad as Dorothy Lewis in the Stout case. But the jury saw through that nonsense, didn't they? So, yeah. Anyway, I'm now going to attempt to play this clip. So, telling me I've got a fault with my audio driver. So, I don't know. It's been working perfectly well for me up to now. And it's not, yeah, it's not picking up my AirPods. Hold on, let me. So it's right. Can you hear this? Can you hear?
Brian Kohberger's trial will start
in
early October, like previously planned. Today, a judge denied a motion to
I can't.
proceedings in his case. Kohberger is accused of murdering 4 University of Idaho students last fall.
Can you hear
and News
it?
Channel 7's Abby Davis joins us now. And Abby, you listened in on those hearings. Walk us through what happened.
Well, Shira, the hearing started late this morning and wrapped up around 6. Kohberger's team hopes.
That's weird. All right. Hold on. So what's this nonsense here? Unsupported audio driver. All right. I'm just going to play with the settings of this live stream. That could be the problem. Let's change it to... No, it's still giving me a fault. Unsupported audio driver is selected in your sound output of system preferences. Please quit the application that is using Boom Audio. I've turned Boom Audio off. What are you talking about? All right. If I go out and come back in, that might help. Hold on. Right. Don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. No, it's still giving me the same error. Hold on. Right. I've turned Boom Audio off. There should be no dramas. Why is it not picking up on my AirPods? Because they're charged. Weird. Still not finding them. Oh, don't you just absolutely hate? Don't you just hate? Right, if I turn Bluetooth off and turn it back on again. Oh, there we go. It's found them now. All right, I think we're all right now. Connected. Good stuff. Right, there we go. We're done. We're done. Bluetooth was on. All I had to do was turn it off and turn it back on again. So all this unsupported audio driver nonsense. I don't know, guys. I don't know. Right, we should be fine now. All right, so this is just a 2-minute clip, courtesy of KTVB. All right, let's go.
Well, Brian Kohberger's trial will start in early October like previously planned. Today, a judge denied a motion to pause court proceedings in his case. Kohberger is accused of murdering 4 University of Idaho students last fall. And News Channel 7's Abby Davis joins us now. And Abby, you listened in on those hearings. Walk us through what happened.
Well, Shira, the hearing started late this morning and wrapped up around 6. Kohberger's team hoped the judge would pause court proceedings because of alleged issues with his grand jury indictment. The defense wasn't happy about how jurors were selected. They were concerned questionnaires given to those jurors didn't have important clerical information. Kohberger's team also argued for more access to DNA evidence. They claimed the state has not turned over all the evidence in the case, and that investigators found other DNA at the murder scene they haven't gotten the chance to review. But prosecuting attorney Bill Thompson says they've given the defense all the evidence they have, aside from one lab report they're still waiting on.
Everything else along with all the notes is what there is, and it's been provided to the defense. They're hoping that there's something else there. It's not there.
The defense also called several witnesses, most were DNA genealogy experts. As we've previously reported, Kohberger claims he was out driving alone at the time of the killings and that he could not have murdered the 4 students. If he's convicted, Kohberger faces the death penalty. Judge didn't make a decision today about any of the DNA evidence. Again, because of the judge's ruling, Kohberger's trial is scheduled to start on October 2nd. Jury selection is set for the week before. As of right now, the trial will be held in Latah County, but Shira, both sides can ask for the trial to move to a different county if they feel like the jury pool is too small. Remember, they want a fair and impartial jury.
Yeah, and that's something we saw in the Lori Vallow trial as well. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I know you'll stay on top of this. Thanks, Abby.
Sorry, I'm muted. Okay. So that was short and sweet, and that told us a lot of information in a nutshell. So judge denied a stay in proceedings for now. Like I said at the beginning, the defense can try again. All the way up to jury selection, they can try this stuff. There is another motions hearing in September, and the judge has not ruled on the DNA evidence as of yet, because, as you heard in that clip, the prosecutor said that they've turned over everything they have. Everything they have. The defense claiming that there's 3 DNA profiles at the scene. Well, okay, all right. So let's work at it from the defense's point of view. So they found, because they went in and did all their own testing and this, that, and the third, right? Remember, because they were the forensics were there for weeks collecting evidence. And then the defense went in and were there collecting evidence. So both sides have got a wealth of potential evidence in their back pocket. And it's the defense who is claiming that these 3 other male DNA profiles. Well, they must have tested them to know that they're male profiles, mustn't they? I mean, look, you know, just your own common sense tells you that they must have tested them to know that they're male DNA profiles. So why don't they make an effort to identify these male DNA profiles? Is it because they're irrelevant? Is it because they know if they test them and identify them, that they are not the same as the DNA on the knife sheath? I rather suspect so. So what they're going to do is throw these if, buts and maybes out there and make people believe that the prosecution is not doing their job and there's prosecutorial misconduct going on. I saw that all over the website previously known as Twitter yesterday. People who, you know, they think they're lawyers, and I'm not a lawyer. I just have common sense. But some people clearly don't have common sense. Because if they're claiming prosecutorial misconduct based on the things that the defense is saying, well, the defense has the information. The defense can do their own testing. And they must have done. They must have done. They must have had those DNA profiles tested at least at some level to know that that DNA is male. And, you know, all they have to do is compare those profiles to the single DNA profile on the knife sheath. I'd be more sympathetic towards them if the DNA on the knife sheath was a mixed profile. So if there was 2 or more profiles on that knife sheath, then I would be more sympathetic to people who say, well, it's just touch DNA and it's just been transferred onto the knife from the bed or something. But if there's other DNA profiles in the vicinity, well, why have they not transferred onto the knife sheath? Is it because the DNA profile on the knife sheath, which is Brian Kohberger's, 100% Brian Kohberger's, is it because he put it there when he took the knife out of the sheath? Or it was there from a previous, you know, occasion, you know, when he bought it or something and he thought he'd cleaned it and he hadn't cleaned it. And the absolute clown thought he was being really organised and left a key piece of evidence at the scene. And now his defence are having to wrap themselves around washing poles and this, that, and everything else they've got to do to be able to try and get him off this, when they must know darn well that he's guilty. Now, everyone's entitled to a defence. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad that he's got a rigorous defence. I'm glad, because he can't come along at a later date and claim that he was unfairly treated by his public defenders. The great people of Idaho are paying for this. But, yeah, 10 attorneys on his team now, apparently. 10 attorneys on his team. Anyway, shall we listen to what the defence has said about why they called these 4 witnesses who could do nothing other than, I mean, I couldn't hear the third one, to be honest. So it's your guess is as good as mine. If anybody's got a better quality audio of the third witness, then I'll listen to it in my own time. But the version I got, I think it was East Idaho News. Maybe it wasn't East Idaho News. I don't think even East Idaho News have got it. But anyway, I did find it, and it was awful. It was awful. I could only hear like every 10th word, so I gave up. But certainly the first two witnesses that we played in the live stream last night, and then the fourth one that I've listened to this morning, they're talking in hypotheticals. They're talking in, well, this is what normally happens, and this could go wrong, and that could go wrong. Nobody is providing any evidence that that went wrong. That thing, whatever that thing is, went wrong in this case. No one is saying that. So let's listen to what the defense has to say about why they called all of these witnesses, and then the prosecution responds. So we'll skip ahead a little bit, kind of somewhere in the middle. I'm not going to play it all, and we're starting at 18 minutes in when the defense starts speaking. So let's go. This is bad audio, guys. There's nothing I can do about it, I'm afraid. I have got the closed captions on, though, so hopefully that does help.
Argued by Ms. Nassif. Yes, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I'd like to start with kind of the overall of this discovery dispute and stuff that's still hanging out, including the stuff that the state claims they're going to comply with or are asking about, as well as what relates to the genetic DNA that we're asking for. To begin with, there's this proposition that there are witnesses here today that are unnecessary because this team is quite capable of articulating it to you and arguing for those things. Well, if that were the case, then we would not have had to go through this exercise to explain to you exactly why all of the information that we're asking for in this third motion to compel is critical to the state's to the defense's case. The state would have taken our motion to compel and complied with producing discovery, but they didn't. And so that is why 4 witnesses were required today to explain it to the court, because our word, our legal argument, is not being taken as the state says that it is, as justifiable reason to produce these materials. Now we're having these arguments about, yes, we have this, no, we don't. And the simple solution, Judge, is just for you to enter an order, ordering all of the things that we have asked for in our third motion to compel. And that puts the state in a position of going to their agents, their Kyles versus Whitley agents that are obligated to produce evidence, hand them an order, tell them the court says that it needs to be produced, and then we will have it. We had to do that with the FBI reports related to the vehicle. We had to do that with the FBI reports related to the cell phone evidence. And while there's frustration on the state, I think what's really going on to a certain degree is that they're reliant on hundreds of law enforcement officers and other agencies to produce these materials to them. So we address all of that when you issue an order that says these things must be produced, and if they are not, then they are going to potentially not be admissible in the jury trial in this case. That solves the yes we did, no we didn't solution about what has or hasn't been produced in this whole case. Now, as it relates to...
Well, okay, so they're saying that they haven't got stuff and they've had to badger the prosecution for things. And yeah, they've been constantly writing to the prosecution. Read the court documents saying we haven't got this and we haven't got this and we haven't got this. And the prosecution replies saying, yes, you have. You have. And they tell them where it is in the documentation. Or they say, we haven't got that yet. And as this woman, I don't know her name, but as she says, you know, the prosecution are relying on hundreds of different agents to produce reports. And currently there's one lab report outstanding still. And the prosecution can't turn that over if they haven't received it yet. So they're now saying, well, you know, evidence that they haven't got can't be used in the trial. And that's fair enough. That's fair enough. I agree with them on that. That if there's evidence that the prosecution have kept behind and then they produce it at trial, just like as a surprise, like surprise, we've got this, the defense are perfectly within the right to say that's not acceptable. Perfectly within the right to say that. However, that's not what's happening, because the prosecution have said that the investigative genetic genealogy, like the nuts and bolts of it, the family trees, for example, they're not going to produce those at trial. They're not going to put on the big screen like Brian's family history. That's not what that's for. All that's for is to find the suspect, as we've talked about at length now. It's just to find the suspect. Once they've found a potential suspect, then they do all of the traditional investigations that law enforcers do. So it's completely unnecessary to have the family tree that they seem to want and all the workings out that they seem to want. Not necessary. The prosecution have already said that's irrelevant to the trial. That was just a tip. So they can blah, blah, blah as much as they want. If they want to do Brian Kohberger's family tree, it's not difficult. Do it yourself. And what will they find? If they recreate the results that the prosecution, or the FBI, it was the FBI that did it, did the genetic genealogy. So if they want to recreate the FBI's working out, they can do. They can get their own DNA from Brian. They can cheek swab him. They can send it off to a lab to get it SNP tested. They can get a SNP profile. They can, which will be the same because it's the same DNA. It's the same Brian Kohberger that was cheek swabbed, right? It's the same Brian Kohberger's DNA that was on the knife sheath. So they can send it off to a lab. They can send it then to a genealogy service like GEDmatch or Family Tree DNA, and they can then compile a family tree based on Brian's DNA. And what will they find? They'll find the same results that the prosecutors did or the FBI did, because it's the same DNA. So they'll find the same things. Are they going to do that? No, because it will prove that their defendant is guilty. So they're going to continue to bluster if buts and maybes to the prosecutors, saying, oh, well, this is not going to be admissible and this is not going to be admissible. Well, so what? They don't need it to be admissible. It's a time-wasting tactic, exactly. Exactly. It's saying, oh, well, you know, we've got all this outstanding. We've got all this, stuff that we need. The judge isn't buying it. The judge isn't buying it. The judge has denied a stay in the proceedings up to now. Up to now. What's my opinion on the US YouTube lawyers who think Kohberger has a genuine reason for all of this? They say they are genuine reasons the defense is questioning the DNA. I don't know who you're talking about. What YouTube lawyers are you talking about? I don't know which YouTube lawyers you're talking about, so I can't help you with that. What I can say is that I understand DNA and I can understand the process. I've been studying genetics since I was 10. Right. I don't call myself an expert because I don't have a formal qualification in genetics, but I've been studying genetics since I was 10. I nearly became a geneticist. It was one of the things I looked at. I did biology as an A-level when I was at college. I did some genetics courses as well at university. But I stuck with psychology because I knew that as a geneticist, I'd have to apply my brain, and I kind of don't want to do that because I'm lazy. But also, I'd probably have to deny some of my own ethical beliefs because there's a lot of animal testing in genetics, and I'm not going to work with laboratory animals. I'm just not. It's against my ethics. And that's the reason. That's the real reason why I didn't become a geneticist, is because ethically, I couldn't have done it. But I thought seriously, long and hard about genetics as a career. And in terms of the genealogy, I've been researching my own family history since 2005. And I've done numerous investigations into other families, namely the Wells, the Summer Wells case. Been doing that for the last 2 years. So I don't call myself an expert in either DNA or genealogy. I could call myself an expert in genealogy, actually, because I do have a degree in history. So as well as a degree in psychology and a PhD in psychology, I also have a degree in history. And some of the courses I took as part of my history degree, I did genealogy. So I could call myself a genealogy expert. I could put that on my about section, like I could put myself as a psychology expert and probably get like 200k subscribers in a week or something. But I don't, because I'm not here on YouTube as an expert in anything. I'm here as an individual who chooses not to use my formal qualifications as part of my video creation. That's just my personal choice. My psychology videos get hardly any views compared to, you know, the other psychologists that are out there that call themselves Dr. this and Dr. that. I don't have doctor on any of my materials. I don't have it in my about section. I don't have it. You can find me very easily. You can find my publications. I've got about 60 something publications in psychology, original pieces of work. You could go and find those if you wanted to. It's not difficult. My real name's Michelle Lowe, Lowe. You could go and find those if you wanted to, but I don't create videos as an expert. But I also have a history degree. I have 2 degrees, history, psychology, and then I've got a PhD in psychology. So I could call myself a genealogy expert quite legitimately with the certification. I could do that. I could show you the credentials, but I choose not to. Like I choose to not call myself an expert in psychology, even though I am, and even though I've probably got more publications and more experience than some of the YouTube psychologists out there. But it's just my choice. It's my choice. So the YouTube lawyers, whoever they are, who are saying that Brian has got a point, they maybe don't understand DNA. I'm only speculating. Maybe they don't understand DNA. Maybe they've been bamboozled by the defence's bluster. That's just a speculation. I don't know, because I haven't seen any of these YouTube lawyers. I don't actually follow any YouTube lawyers. I occasionally watch the occasional video, but I don't follow any of them, and I haven't followed any of them in relation to this case. So I don't know. But I will explain in as simplest terms as I can, again, the differences between SNP testing, which is used in genetic genealogy, and SDR testing, short tandem repeat testing, which is used in traditional DNA testing, comparing one DNA sample versus another. So I'll do that at the end, because I've done it in a video. I've talked about it. I talked about it at length last night, and I get to a point where it's just becoming repetitive, and people who've heard me say it all before are going to be like, Michelle, you said this once. But I really do think that people aren't getting it. And maybe it's that some of the YouTube lawyers don't get it either. I don't know. Don't hold me to that. That's just a speculation. I spelt my surname wrong. Lowe, Lowe. Look, I'll put my name in the chat. This is my real name. Go and look me up. Go and find me. Go and do some research. All right, let's carry on here.
The DNA material that we are asking for, I will just briefly summarize what our experts have done for you today. Really, with Steve Mercer, we probably pretty much could have put him on the stand and ended right there, because it's crystal clear with his testimony that it is a minimum standard for this team to have this discovery in order to do our work. This discovery allows us to investigate the reliability of evidence. It allows us to make determination about what experts we need to hire. It allows us to make decisions about how we might cross-examine this evidence, how we're going to confront this evidence. And he also made it crystal clear to you that it is scientific evidence, because we began with a surface trace sample that has been extracted to DNA. A portion of that DNA went to an STR test, and a portion of that test went to some other lab that we really don't yet know. There's been discussion in meetings about whether or not it's Othram lab or some other lab. I think kind of the general knowledge is that it's Othram, but we really don't even know that. So this original.
All right, so she's being intentionally vague here to make it look like the prosecution are hiding things from them, right? So yes, there's a scientific element to genetic genealogy in terms of creating the DNA profile. So SDR testing, right? I'm going to do the DNA now. It makes actually more sense to do it now. All right. So this is the difference between STR testing and SNP testing, or single nucleotide polymorphism testing. All right. So I don't know, you might not be able to see all of this, but this is DNA on your left-hand side. This is a strand of DNA, right? Obviously an artist's impression of a strand of DNA. It's a double helix. It's like a sugary backbone, and you get one strand of that double helix from your father and one strand from your mother. And along the entire length of DNA are these little chemicals that are called nucleotides. And they can be one of 4 different chemicals at each point, at each base. It's called a base, each base. Either adenine, thymine, guanine, or cytosine. You don't have to remember the names to understand how this DNA testing works. All right. So when they do STR testing, which is the traditional DNA testing that has been used for donkey's years now to compare 2 samples. So in this case, what's wrong with my Cash App? No idea. Why? What's it saying? I've no idea. What's wrong with my Cash App? You have to use a pound sign rather than a dollar sign because I'm in the UK. So that might be it. I honestly don't know. Okay, so to compare one sample against another. So in this case, they've got the DNA from the knife sheath, and then when Brian was arrested, they cheek swabbed him and got DNA from his cheek cells, and they compared them. Right, they compared them. So that DNA profile that they use in STR testing, it takes sections of DNA that they basically don't code for anything. They're just, it's called junk DNA. There's a lot of our genome that is just junk DNA. And when they don't code, when certain sections of DNA don't code for anything, they can basically do what they want. They can repeat, they can mutate, and nothing happens. Right? Nothing happens to your body you don't get cancer, or you don't have a child with 3 heads, because that junk DNA that has done all these repeats and blah, 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 it's just there. It's just there in the genome, right? It's not coding for anything. And there's various parts in the genome that these short tandem repeats have happened. And they've, in each individual, they've become so unidentical, if you will, so different, that they're good places in the genome to test when you're comparing one sample versus another sample. That's why this SDR testing is used in law enforcement, right? So they take these sections of DNA. All right, so this might be helpful. Now, I don't know whether you're going to be able to see this at all, because I'm struggling to see it. But this is from the United States Department of Justice. So this is not from some fly-by-night website. This is from the United States Department of Justice. And this is explaining what genetic genealogy is in terms of law enforcement and how it's different from the from genetic genealogy. So I'll just read you this paragraph here in the background. I'll just read one paragraph. Forensic genealogy. Hold on. I can't even see it. Forensic DNA typing is historically used to compare 13 to 20 STR DNA markers between a forensic sample and one from a reference sample. When a suspect's identity is unknown, a participating crime laboratory may upload a forensic profile into the FBI's Combined DNA Index System, or CODIS, right? So they take DNA from a crime scene, they test it on 13 to 20 of these short tandem repeats that are dotted throughout the genome. They use 20 now. I think 20 is the standard. And they use the same 20 every time they do an SDR test. And they upload that sample to CODIS and see if they get a match, right? That's SDR testing in a nutshell. Hold on a minute. Let me go back to my other slide. So SDR testing that's been used for donkey's years now in law enforcement takes 20 of these sections of DNA known as short tandem repeats, isolates them, and then sends the sample. So the lab sends the sample to law enforcement and they upload it to CODIS, right? That's what happened when they found the DNA on the knife sheath. They did SDR testing. They got an SDR sample and they uploaded it to CODIS, and it didn't get a match. They only were able to match that DNA sample to an individual when they got Brian Kohberger under arrest and tested his DNA, right? So they got SDR testing from the sample off the knife sheath. They did an SDR test of the same 20 genetic markers. The same 20 genetic markers are used across the board. So it's standard. It's a standard test. Standard test. Not just in the US, in my country as well. We have a DNA database that's exactly the same as CODIS. Like someone, a criminal from the UK could be added to the US database because it's the same test, right? It's been used for donkey's years. So they got the SDR test from Brian's cheek cells and they compared them. And hey presto, 5 octillion. 5 octillion chance that so an octillion has got 27 zeros behind it. So there's a 5 octillion chance that the DNA from Brian's cheek swab is not the DNA on the knife sheath. That's a slam dunk. It doesn't get better than that. Come on now. Come on now. 27 zeros. 27 zeros. Donkey's years. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? 27 zeros. Exactly. Exactly. It's more people than have ever lived on planet Earth. And probably any other planet. Any other planet. Maybe it's a northern UK thing. I don't know. We use it a lot here. We use it a lot. So when they don't get a match in CODIS, right, what they're able to do now is use newer technology. And the newer technology is the SNP test. So instead of taking these short tandem repeats, what SNP testing does is it tests the entire human genome. It takes the entire human genome and then looks at millions or at least hundreds of thousands of genetic markers throughout the entire genome. And the hundreds of thousands of markers it goes for, and again, that's standard so that you can compare one profile against another, right? That's how you're able to get your DNA matches from your family on Ancestry.com or 23andMe, and you're able to find cousins that you didn't know existed, is because the same SNPs, the same genetic markers are used every time. It's a standard test. It's newer technology. It's newer to the public. It's certainly newer to law enforcement, but it's a standard test. Or else DNA testing sites just wouldn't work. So what SNP testing does is it takes hundreds of thousands across the entire genome and looks for variations at single sites. So a SNP, a single nucleotide polymorphism. So it takes, let's say on this example here, on this PowerPoint, it's comparing 3 different men, right? So they're all different men on the SDR testing, but at the SNP level, at the single nucleotide level, right? This man at this particular marker has got a T, and these 2 men here have got an A, right? But they're different men. But potentially, because they've both got an A at that location along the genome, they could be related, right? They'd have to look at hundreds of thousands more markers to see whether they actually are, right? So short tandem repeat testing takes 20 genetic markers across on a well-established test. SNP testing tests the entire genome and looks for hundreds of thousands of single markers. And that way they're able to look at variations at a very detailed level. That's how they're able to calculate that this person could be your cousin or could be your second cousin. Right? So that's what was done with Brian's DNA. Now, people who don't understand the difference between SDR testing and SNP testing, it doesn't matter if you don't understand it at the biological level, as long as you understand that these are standard tests. Just because the SDR test is the standard in law enforcement and what is used in CODIS doesn't mean that the SNP testing that's used in genealogy is some kind of woo-woo nonsense. It's not. It's not. It's standard testing now. It's just newer. And certainly law enforcement, or it's only in the last few years that law enforcement have realized how good it is. Like cold cases have been solved. Like what's his name? The river killer. Can't remember his name, but he was caught. That case was so cold until somebody applied genealogy. There's been numerous people who have been, unidentified, Jane and John Does, that have been identified using genetic genealogy. One of the, in the Long Island serial killer case, one of the previously unidentified victims has simply now been, what am I having to deal with? What's going on? What's up, Amber? Why is there a drama going on? Gary Ridgeway, thank you. Why is there a drama? Because you're using caps. If you need to use caps, use caps. I don't know why you're getting stressy about it. Why are we getting stressy about it? Amber, they're not suspects. They're not suspects. Just because you think they should be suspects, they are not suspects. They're not suspects. Get it into your head. They're not suspects. And you've said bye about 20 times now, so yeah, bye. They're not suspects. All right. Okay, back to this. Dear me. So, just because SNP testing is newer doesn't mean that it's woo-woo. And there are a number of labs, they're all private labs, that do SNP testing. They do SNP testing for 23andMe, for Ancestry, for all of the other genealogy websites that are out there. So whichever lab, no, I'm not looking at the evidence, Amber. I'm not looking at the evidence because you don't have the evidence. Law enforcement have the evidence, right? And I thought you were going. But you've not gone yet. They were cleared. They were cleared. Get it through your head. They were cleared because law enforcement said so. So how do you know they were suspects? How do you know they're suspects? Let's throw it back to you, Amber. How do you know they're suspects? What evidence have you collected? Were you part of the forensics team who were there at 1122 King Road? Do you have evidence that you collected secretly, that you've had tested in your own time, and you've got this evidence that law enforcement doesn't have? Let's see it. Come on now. Go away. Go away. Being silly now. Being silly. Entitled to your opinion, but that's as far as I'm going to go with this conversation, Amber, because you're being silly. If you've got the evidence, go and tell law enforcement that you've got the evidence. Did I see the joke of forensic? I have no idea what that means. So, no. They've been cleared. They have been cleared. Read my lips. They have been cleared. Good Lord. All right. I'm ignoring you now. Sorry, Amber, but I am. All right. So, because SNP testing is newer, right, doesn't mean to say it's woo-woo nonsense. It's scientific, as the defense have said. It's a scientific, and there's numerous laboratories that do this SNP testing, but they all test in the same way. They all test the same SNPs. If they didn't test the same SNPs, the hundreds of thousands of them, we'd never be able to compare my genetic genealogy with your genetic genealogy. It wouldn't work. So each of these labs that do it, it doesn't matter which lab that the FBI sent the DNA to, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether the DNA was analysed by one of the FBI crime labs or it was analysed by one of the private labs that is utilised by sites like 23andMe, Ancestry, etc. Doesn't matter, because they're all testing the same SNPs. That's why playing dumb, whether it's the defence in Brian's case that are playing dumb, or whether it's one of these so-called YouTube lawyers who say that Brian's got a point. I shouldn't say so-called YouTube lawyers. I'm sure they actually are lawyers. They're just lawyers talking on YouTube, right? That they don't, maybe, again, speculation, they don't fully understand the science behind it. And they don't fully understand that all SNP testing, regardless of what lab it was sent to, tests the same SNPs, the same single nucleotide polymorphisms. There's a standard in the industry. There has to be, or else you wouldn't be able to compare one profile with another. So 23andMe and Ancestry and MyHeritage and Family Tree DNA, they'd all go out of business because nobody would be able to compare their profile with anybody else's. So they are standard. They are standard. Like SDR testing of those 20 short tandem repeats is standard. And that's why the DNA system in my country is comparable to the DNA system in the United States. If I went and committed a crime in the United States, they would test my DNA in the same way in the United States as they would do in my country, because it's a standard test. SNP testing is a very different test, but it's using the same industry standard, that it's the same SNPs that are tested and compared, regardless of which lab it was sent to. So it doesn't matter if the defense sends Brian's profile, Brian's DNA, to the same lab that the FBI did, or they send it to a different lab. They would say the same result. And I'm arguing that the reason why they haven't done that and done their own SNP testing is because deep down in their cold, stony hearts, they know if they did, they would they'd shoot their defendant in the foot before he faces the firing squad, because it would come out as Brian Kohberger. Thank you, DC Prime Time, for the $4.99. My understanding is that they compare every 15th nucleotide in a sequence, or is it a sequence of 15, and search for that combination against a control. Which type of testing? No, they don't test every 15th. They certainly don't in SDR testing. There's 20 well-established locations in the genome that they use. It's not like every 15th repeat. It's 20 of these well-established sections. In SNP testing, they, I mean, it might work out as approximately every 15th nucleotide. It might work out that way, but I don't know that that's like written in an industry standard somewhere. It could be, but the point I'm making is that these two types of tests are very different. But in terms of the labs that do this work, there is an industry standard that in SDR testing, they're always comparing the same bits of DNA, and in SNP testing, they're always comparing the same bits of DNA. So I can't make it any clearer. I honestly can't. But I just want to read you one more paragraph from the US Department of Justice, which, again, not a fly-by-night, not a fly-by-night website, but the US Department of Justice. So I want to read you this little section here. I'm sorry if you can't see it. It's easy to find on the internet. I might have put it in the description box, or I might have not. Did I? I don't know whether I did or not. Okay, so it's important to note that personal genetic information is not transferred, retrieved, downloaded, or retained by genetic genealogy service users, including law enforcement, during the automated search and comparison process. One sentence. Let me read it again. It's important to note that personal genetic information is not transferred, retrieved, downloaded, or retained by genetic genealogy service users, including law enforcement, during the automated search and comparison process. What does that mean for Brian's case? It means that the lab that did the SNP testing does not have Brian's personal information. All it has is a DNA sample. The FBI do not have personal genetic information other than the sample, right? And then when they go on to do the next step, which is the family tree creation, no one, whether you're a service user on 23andMe, whether you're a service user on Ancestry, whether you're a service user on GEDmatch, whether you're a private user or law enforcement, you can't see it. Oh. You can see it. Well, you might not be able to, it's on the screen. You might not be able to see it because I can't zoom in. It's on the, hold on, I'll do it this way. And then I can zoom in. All right. This is the whole document. So I can zoom right in on this PDF. It's just that I'd uploaded it to StreamYard, so... All right, so it's down here. So US Department of Justice, interim policy, forensic genetic genealogy, DNA analysis and searching. So it's on page 3. Here, bottom paragraph of page 3. It's important to note that personal genetic information is not transferred, retrieved, downloaded, or retained by genetic genealogy service users, including law enforcement, during the automated search and comparison process. So, this thing that the defense are asking for doesn't exist. Law enforcement do not have it. They do not have the personal genetic information from any of the comparisons that were used against Brian Kohberger's DNA to develop the family tree. They don't have it. It's not stored. The FBI cannot access it. Each individual user only the individual user has the access to their own DNA sample or the results of the sample. Sasha, member for 17 months. You're enjoying the spicy Michelle. Thank you for your continued support. It's pretty warm in here, actually. When I get spicy, I get very hot. It's kind of sticky. Welcome to memberships, Janine. Welcome. I had another new member as well. I may not have put it on the screen because I was mid-rant. Let me just check if it's back. There we go. Thank you so much as well, JRM, for becoming a member. So welcome both of you to memberships. Very kind of you. You're now part of the Secret Agents Club. So if they don't have access to the personal genetic information of all of these people that they compared, because it's just not stored. It's just not stored. The FBI don't have access to it. So if, let's say, one of Brian's cousins did a genetics test, and that's how they managed to use genetic genealogy to isolate the suspect, the potential suspect, law enforcement, the FBI, do not have access to. The lab, right, do not have access to. It's all coded, right? The names are not put on the samples. It's coded. So the lab that was used cannot give the defense the names of people that were used in whatever comparisons were done during Brian's family tree building. The FBI don't have access to it. It's just not stored for user privacy. It's not stored. The US Department of Justice has done a document with that in. I'll read it one more time. It's important to note that personal genetic information is not transferred, retrieved, downloaded, or retained by genetic genealogy service users, including law enforcement, during the automated search and comparison process. So during the DNA comparison on GEDmatch or family tree DNA that law enforcement have used, during the family tree building, they do not have access to the personal genetic information. They only have access to what's there on that website, and that will be usernames and username. You could put any name in, right? And the names of Brian's relatives, well, do they want the names of all Brian's relatives? No, because that is not within the remit of the Idaho Code, which, interestingly, none of these witnesses talked about the Idaho Code. The names of people who happen to be a defendant's relatives, they're not required to turn those over. Those are innocent people. So nothing that the defense is asking for is relevant. So I don't know what else to tell you. I don't know what else to tell you, honestly. All right, so we'll carry on with this irritating woman here, who's going to frustrate me more. So I've done the DNA bit. Is it clearer? All you have to remember is there's two different types of DNA test, and each of those testing methods are industry standard, regardless of what lab is used. They're both industry standard tests so that they can compare comparisons. So that's all you really need to know, that there's two different types of tests. One's called SNP testing, one's called SDR testing. They're different tests. They're used in different ways. But the labs that do that analysis on that raw DNA do it in a standardized way so that they can compare across samples. So that's all you need to know. And hopefully, maybe the defense genuinely don't understand it. I don't know. Maybe they genuinely don't understand it. Maybe the YouTube lawyers that are saying that Brian's got a point genuinely don't understand it. I don't know. But what I can tell you for 100% certainty is that I understand it. And the reason why I don't call myself a DNA or a genealogy expert on YouTube is because I choose not to. I could give you the credentials for my history degree and my genealogy courses. I could go and get my certification and I could show you right now. I choose not to because I'm not here as an expert in history. I'm not here as an expert in genealogy. I'm not here as a PhD, as a doctor of psychology. I'm here as me, so that I can come and talk shit if I want to. I can come and talk about any case I want to in any way I want to. I've given myself the kind of leeway. I'm not here as a professional. Right? The reason why I don't put my credentials here, there, and everywhere is because people would hold me to a certain professional standard if I did. And I don't want to be held to any professional standard because I'm not here in my role as a psychologist. I'm not here as an expert in genealogy. I'm here as me. And even though I get way more subscribers, if I did, use my professional credentials, I may have even topped 100K by now. Who knows? But I'm not here as a professional, so you won't see those credentials on my About page. But I will tell you that I've got a PhD in psychology. I've got 60-odd publications in psychology. My real name's Michelle Lowe, Lowe, if you want to go and look it up. And I also have a degree in history. And some of the courses that I took as part of that degree were genealogy. I don't know if you're going to get another person talking about this case who understands genealogy like I do. I'm sure there are other people who understand genealogy who've talked about this case. But I'm telling you, 100% that the defense in this case are wrong. I'm telling you, they're wrong. All right, let's carry on. I need a drink.
Original scientific sample from this surface trace DNA has been the product of multiple scientific experiments that we are entitled to have the underlying data on. And if we don't have that information, we are not going to be able to be effective attorneys for Mr. Kohberger. We then were educated by Dr. Larkin, and it was helpful to really understand what is this genetic genealogy and what's going on. And one of the first questions that the court asked as we began today was, if we have a sample and we have a buccal swab, why is all of this other material that you're asking for related to the genetic genealogy so important? And the first, the second, the third, and the fourth witnesses really all set that up. But in particular, Dr. Larkin explained to you that in that process, there are so many human decisions that are being made about the ultimate SNP sample that was used to take further action. Some of those human decisions are what type of test was run. We don't know if it was a whole genome sequencing or if it was this next generation sequencing. That's something that's not being disclosed to us. Whole genome sequencing has a whole set of information that we may be able to look at and see if our STR sample that the state is relying on is indeed reliable, or if there are contamination issues, or if there are mixture issues. Next generation sequencing, if that was the method.
No. You can't take your SDR testing that you've done and compare it to the results of a SNP test. You can't do that. It's physically impossible. They are two different tests. You're talking bullshit. whatever woman you are, whatever your name is. You're talking bullshit. You can't take whole genome sequencing for SNP testing that's been used in SNP testing, whichever lab it went from. You can't use that results of this SNP testing and compare it with an SDR test. You can't. They are completely different methodologies. They're using different genetic markers, different parts of the genome. You can't do it. Irrelevant. Blimey.
The method has bio-identifying information that was used, decisions that were made by human beings about what to include in gaps, what to strip out in gaps, and how to create the SNP sample that was then uploaded. Another critical piece of information that you learned today, Judge, is that law enforcement may or may not have used databases that they had the right to access. We don't know.
Again, complete bullshit. Complete bullshit, right? The only thing that law enforcement are not allowed to do is log onto a site like 23andMe as an individual user and upload a defendant's or a suspect's sample pretending to be an individual user, and then use the 23andMe DNA database to find genetic matches. That would be wrong. They cannot do that because under the 23andMe's terms of service and promise to its users is that they are not going to be, their DNA is not going to be compared to suspects in legal cases. Right. There's only two DNA databases, GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA, that allow law enforcement to use the DNA database that they've accrued because their users are aware that the DNA could be used by law enforcement to compare against suspects. And even on those sites, you can opt out. If you don't want your DNA to be used by law enforcement, you can opt out. Now, they talked yesterday about a potential loophole that there might be. Well, there might be. There might be a loophole. I don't know. There might be a loophole. But if there's a loophole, that's the problem for GEDmatch and for Family Tree DNA to sort out. That's not an issue for law enforcement to sort out. That's an issue for those websites to sort out, to ensure that the users who do not want their DNA to be used as comparisons to a suspect is abided by. That's an issue for those websites, not for this case or any other case where law enforcement have compared a suspect sample or a Jane Doe or a John Doe sample to create an identity for that person. So that's not an issue for this case alone. It's not. Do they keep the genealogy database used private? No, they're public sites. So let's look at GEDmatch. Oh, the public sites. This is GEDmatch. This is GEDmatch. Comprehensive solutions for genetic genealogy and family tree search. There's 1.4 members globally, 45 plus DNA tools. They've been working for 12 years. And there is 350 million people in GEDCOMs, whatever that is. So I could take my raw data, my DNA, I could download my DNA from Ancestry or from 23andMe, and I could upload it to GEDmatch, and then law enforcement could use my sample in future studies or future cases. How it works: take a DNA test. So you have to take a DNA test yourself. GEDmatch doesn't do this. GEDmatch doesn't do the laboratory testing for you. right? If you pay your money, whatever it might be, $100, whatever it is, to 23andMe, they deal with the lab. They send your sample, your cheek swab, off to a lab. And it's SNP tested. Those hundreds of thousands of single polymorphisms are picked over. And the sample is then uploaded to 23andMe's database. And then you can work on your DNA matches yourself. You can look to see how many people match with your DNA, and you can choose to contact your second cousin in New York if you want to. I've got a second cousin in New York that I have absolutely no idea who they are, but they share 4% of my DNA. I have no idea who they are. But apparently we share the same great-grandparents, so hey ho. But GEDmatch doesn't do that. They don't do the laboratory stuff. So you've got to send the DNA off to a lab yourself, and then you get the results back, and then you can upload it to GEDmatch. So I've already had my DNA tested on 23andMe and Ancestry, so I could download my raw data file. I've actually downloaded my raw data file. I've got it somewhere, and I could upload it to GEDmatch. Right? So take a DNA test and download the results. And it doesn't matter which lab. Doesn't matter which lab you've sent it to, because SNP testing is standard. They test the same SNPs regardless of whether you send it to lab A, lab B, lab C, or wherever. It doesn't matter which lab 23andMe used. It doesn't matter. Right? I can take my raw data and upload it to GEDmatch, and it will compare from with users who have had their DNA tested in another lab. It doesn't matter. This is why I know this defense is talking absolute horseshit. Horseshit. Sassafras Kath, member for 10 months. Thank you to who gifted memberships. Did someone give memberships? Did someone give memberships? I've not got, I'll have to get YouTube up. I've not got YouTube up. Hold on a minute. Let me get YouTube up. Okay. Who gifted memberships? I might not even be able to find it. It's one of the things that StreamYard doesn't let me see yet. I have to have YouTube up. Who did it? Oh, let's have a look. Go find me. Thank you so much. Gifted 5 memberships. Tater Farm, 723 Trinity, JD Bambara, Angie Baby, and not Angie Baby, sorry. Sweet Peas. So that's 4. So who got the other one? I don't know who got the 5th one. Huh, interesting. Oh, Beach Fairy. There you are. There you are. So Beach Fairy, Tater Farm, 0723 Trinity, JD, and Sweet Peas. Welcome to memberships for a month, courtesy of Go Find Me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. Okay. Let's get rid of that. All right, so take a DNA test, upload the DNA data file to GEDmatch for processing, explore matching and comparison reports and other DNA tools. And it's free. Join for free. And then there's another site called Family Tree DNA, which works in very much the same way. I think GEDmatch is the bigger one. I think law enforcement actually upload to both, but I think GEDmatch is the bigger one. So the defense could do this. The defense could do this. They don't need to have the family tree from the prosecution, who are absolutely legally not obliged to give them the names of Brian's relatives. They could do this. Oh, really? Sasha McLean did 5 earlier too. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it. It's because I've not got my other computer set up. Because I had 2 computers that were both low on charge. They were both low on charge, and I couldn't have both of them set up with chargers attached, because next to my desk here, I've only got one plug, and I couldn't be bothered going rooting around for an extension lead that has got a dual plug thing. So I had to make a choice. So I'm really sorry, Sasha, that I missed your 5 gifted memberships, but it's very kind of you. And welcome to those 5 people who were gifted 1 month of memberships. So yeah, I had charger issues, and then I had audio issues, but we've got it sorted. We've got it sorted. Got it sorted. All right. Okay, so that's how it works. That's how it works. I know they're talking absolute horseshit. They're talking complete BS. They really are. They really are. And anybody who's believing them, I just can't. I just can't. Just do a little bit of your own research. It's not difficult to get your head around this. It's not. It really isn't. To get your head around the biology, yeah, it's tricky. But you don't need to understand the biology. You really don't need to understand the biology. You just need to understand that labs that SNP test are different. They're different tests than the labs that do SDR tests. The 2 can't be compared, as she's trying to argue. Yes, I did. I did. Members, all you new members, there's a members only video if you want to if you want to watch me metal detecting for my lost keys. you can you can go watch a video of me metal detecting. But it turns out that I didn't need a metal detector because they were in the house all the time. They were in the house. They're in a box of blankets that the cat sleeps on. They were in there. Who knows? Who knows? Anyway, let's carry on.
We don't know what databases they uploaded to. We don't have the raw data to know if they accessed people that had opted out of the databases that they are allowed in.
And you're not going to be able to find that. You're not going to be able to find that because you'd have to go through each individual user. You'd have to go through every user of GEDmatch to find out. Right, that you're not going to find that information. Law enforcement doesn't have that information. It's not available to the public. It's not. You can't have that information. And something that the second person, that woman, whose name escapes me, Larkin, I think her surname was, she was going on about, well, you know, as a genealogist, I use 23andMe and I use Ancestry. And there's a lot of people on the site previously known as Twitter who use that and run with it as an example of prosecutorial misconduct. Now, just because 23andMe and Ancestry and so on and so forth don't allow law enforcement to log on as individual users and upload DNA and use their users' DNA as a comparison, and it's only GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA that allow it, it doesn't mean to say that once they get to the Family Tree compilation stage, because the DNA stage is the first stage, And then once you've got some DNA matches, then you compile a family tree. And you've got to compile a family tree to understand who your potential suspect is. Because at the moment, the DNA sample that you've uploaded has no name attached to it, because you don't know their name. The reason why you're doing this is to find out their name. So the next stage is the traditional genealogy. And the traditional genealogy uses records, uses census information, uses birth, deaths, and marriages information, uses public address databases, uses parish records, uses a whole range of records that can be accessed legally via Ancestry. Not 23andMe, because they don't hold that information. But Ancestry.com, I'm a member. But there's a lot of these records on Ancestry.com. This is my profile on Ancestry.com that are actually in the public domain. There's some that are just accessible via Ancestry, and that's what you pay a subscription for those records that can't be gleaned from anywhere else. But a lot of the records that are on Ancestry are publicly available information. Like some of the censuses are publicly available information. There's one of these that's publicly available. I can't remember which one it is. The US, a lot of birth, deaths, and marriages, UK parish records, a lot of those are available on other sites. So you can see here it's listed the free indexes. So that's free. So that's publicly available to anybody who isn't a member of Ancestry, because they can be gleaned everywhere else. There's Lancashire births, deaths, and marriages that are on here somewhere that I can access completely free from the Lancashire online clerk website, which is this. I can go through the registers. I love this site. And go through the registers for the parish in the county of Lancashire. And it includes Liverpool, Manchester. It's a big site. So they are perfectly within their rights to use any publicly available records, whether it's on a genealogy website like Ancestry, or whether it's on parish records like this one, or whether it's, you know, sometimes they actually have to do the legwork and go to registry offices and records houses to find information that hasn't been digitalized and put on online. There's a lot of records, certainly in the UK, that you can only access by going to a physical place and looking them up yourself. When Ellie build the tree, do they have the names? No, they only have the names for anybody that they put in the family tree. So if, oops, no, don't want to do that. If I go back to Ancestry and I go to my own tree. All right, let me look for, like, this is my own tree, right? So this is, I'm not put anybody who's alive on the screen here. I'm just being very careful. So that's my granddad, Arthur Lowe. That's my nan, Vera. And then this is Vera's family tree here. All right. So it's only when you are looking through records and you're able to find the names of these ancestors and their descendants that you fill in your family tree with a name. Otherwise, law enforcement is not going to, they're not interested in the names of anybody who isn't relevant to building the family tree of the suspect. In this case, obviously, it's Brian Kohberger. So they only have the names for the people that they choose to fit into this family tree. And under Idaho law, they are not required. They are not required. Go and read the statute. They are not required to provide the names of any relative of the defendant that they are taking to court. No, you don't have to put the names in if you don't want to. No. It's only if you choose to build a family tree like I have that you're interested in names. Your great-grandfather came from Haywood. Ah, cool. That's not too far from here. You found out your great-granddad was Portuguese. That's cool. When my youngest son, Kyle, did his 23andMe, he found out that he's 2% Pakistani. It's like, you are? Because he's got blonde hair and blue eyes. And Kyle's dad had blonde hair and blue eyes. And Kyle's grandparents are all blue-eyed, very pale, like they go out in the sun and they're like burnt to a crisp in 5 minutes. So 2% Pakistani. And he was like, that's amazing. That's amazing. Where's my Pakistani roots from? So I have no idea. But it's from his dad's side. But we've no idea. We've no idea which ancestor was from Pakistan. It's so interesting. So interesting. You got a great-granddad from Russia. Cool. So cool. It's so interesting. It really is. It really is. Kyle was disappointed, though, that he wasn't part Jamaican. He's always wanted to be Jamaican. I think it's because he likes the national anthem or something. No, it's the flag. He really likes the flag. So he was disappointed that he wasn't part Jamaican. But yeah, anyway. So yeah. So the defense are talking shit. They really are talking horse shit. I'll let her prattle on for a few minutes longer, and then I'm going to switch to the prosecutor and listen to a little bit of what he said. He talks slightly more sense than this bizarre woman.
And we don't know if they uploaded information to MyHeritage. If we have that raw data, we will be able to make that determination. It could be that nothing is amiss, but certainly when we're having to fight this hard to get this information, it makes us quite suspect, especially when you've got a witness like Ms. Vargas with her experience who's saying this happens in the industry, and I know because I work for law enforcement. And every single person in this courtroom should have pause when we are talking about forensic science that is no more than 5 years old.
Bullshit. It's way more than 5 years old. Now, fair enough, law enforcement haven't been using it for very long, but genealogy is a very, very old, it's almost art, right? Traditional genealogy, but the DNA testing that is now available, that like Ancestry makes available to its users, it's older than 5 years. Just because law enforcement is just now taking benefit of it doesn't mean to say that it's 5 years old. GEDmatch has been on a thing for 12 years. GEDmatch has been a thing for 12 years. So, yes, it's new. Yes, it's newer, shall I say. It's newer, but it's not brand new. Did you miss the OJ trial? Clearly, yeah. And traditional SDR DNA testing has been used for many years. So I can't with this woman. I just can't. And again, it's ifs and buts. If ifs and buts were candy and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. She's saying, well, you know, they might have put it on a website that they weren't allowed to. Well, you can't say that. Whereabouts, you know, if they've put it on 23andMe or they've put it on MyHeritage, do you think they're going to admit it? No, they're not going to do that. Do you know why they're not going to do that? They're not going to do it because it will potentially cripple the case. So I can guarantee, as much as I can guarantee anything, that the FBI aren't going to sneak around and put a DNA sample on a website that they're not allowed to. I mean, but they are allowed to use websites like Ancestry, just like you are and I am, to take records in order to build a family tree. All they're not allowed to do under Ancestry's terms of service or 23andMe's terms of service is upload a DNA sample. That's against their terms of service. They can't upload a DNA sample from a crime scene to build a family tree to get a suspect. They're not allowed to. However, they are allowed to use any records that might be on Ancestry or might be on any other website or any other records office, anywhere. They're allowed to do all of that. This is why the second woman, the Larkin lady, she confused the matter by saying, oh, well, when I do genealogy, I go on Ancestry and blah, blah, blah. And people picked up their ears and said, well, Ancestry don't allow this kind of testing. Well, no, they don't allow you to upload a sample's DNA or a suspect's DNA, but they do allow anybody to subscribe if they want to. And there are a bulk of free records, sets of records on Ancestry because they're publicly available elsewhere. I can't with this woman. And look at Brian. Look at Brian. Oh, look at him, like an attentive little student there. I can't with this woman anymore. I'm going to fast forward a little bit. The link to this is in the description box if you want to go and listen to it all. I'm going to fast forward a little bit and let's listen to the prosecutor.
Let's just say, for the sake of discussion, that FBI went around the rules. Does it have any impact?
It does. It does for a variety of reasons. It's going to have an impact on the method of cross-examination. As a preliminary matter, it's probably going to result in a motion to suppress based on an improper search and privacy rights. So we're going to have to breach prosecution.
Whose rights would be violated there?
Mr. Kohberger's rights. But Judge, we can't make a decision about who until we know what the raw data is and what it says.
Sure.
Right?
I'm muted again. He knows it's bullshit. Right, we're definitely going to the prosecutor now. You can look at him, well, you know, saying, well, whose rights would be violated? Well, Mr. Kohberger's will be violated because we don't have his raw data. Well, you do have his raw data. You have his DNA. Just send it off to a lab and get it snip tested and do it yourself. You do have his DNA. You do have his raw data. His raw data is his DNA. And whichever lab you send it to does exactly the same type of test. Dear God. Right, prosecutor, here we come. Let's listen to him for a few minutes.
That could not be more incorrect, could not possibly be more incorrect. And how do you know that, Your Honor? Because not a single one of their witnesses would say that, other than Mr. Mercer, who, to your question, then admitted, that's my hypothesis. If Your Honor looks, I would direct you to the affidavit we submitted from the manager of the ISP lab. And what she says in paragraph 9, this is the entire paragraph. I affirm STR data and SNP data cannot be directly compared. They have zero scientific evidence backing up this idea that somehow the SNP profile affects the STR analysis. Yet that's their argument here today. So they gave you 4 witnesses, but those witnesses didn't give you the evidence that they need to assert that argument.
Thank you. That's all I needed to hear. That they know the truth. They know the truth. None of the witnesses that the defense brought related any of this ridiculous information to this case, nor did they talk about the differences between STR testing and SNP testing. Exactly as the prosecutor has said here, they cannot be compared. They are different tests. They are looking at different parts of the genome in different ways. Thank you. Thank you. That's all I needed to hear. But people just cannot let it go. They cannot understand that Brian's rights haven't been violated because they want him to be innocent. People want him to be innocent so that they can claim that law enforcement have framed him, or that there's prosecutorial misconduct because Kohberger is this little innocent little gem of a man. No. No, he's guilty. I'm telling you, he's guilty. Innocent till proven guilty in a court of law. This is just Michelle's personal opinion, but based on the information that we've got, which certainly, you know, I think we're in for a few surprises at trial, just how much evidence the prosecution have against Kohberger. I'm sure they have more than what we know about. But based on the DNA, based on a bulk of circumstantial evidence from the digital data, from the surveillance data, it all leads to one person, and that is Brian Kohberger. That is Brian Kohberger. Oh, dear me. Oh, no. Heard an interview with one of the head Brian's girls fan club. Oh, no way. She claims to be paying for all manner of things for BK. I think the taxpayer is the good people of Idaho are not only paying for the prosecution of Brian Kohberger, they're also paying for the 10 lawyers that he's got in his back pocket there. He's got 10 public defenders on his case. On his case. 10 public defenders. And poor little Brian is sitting in his jail cell with his little fan club. You know, people writing to him. He's got this little fan base. What they see in him, I've got no idea. I can't wait for the release of the discovery, though, because all of those letters that have been sent to him via the jail become public record. I've got a couple of videos, actually, reading Chris Watts' fan mail. Oh, it's so sad. Some of the women that wrote to, and not just women either, who wrote to Chris Watts. It's so funny, hilarious. I had great fun making those videos. I think they call Chris Watts fan mail. I think I've got 2 videos. So definitely, once the trial's happened and the discovery is released, then I'll be doing videos about Brian Kohberger's fan mail just for fun. Yeah, he's got friends now. Oh, he's never had friends in his entire life. Yes, he does. He does. Have you seen those pictures of Alex Murdoch taking topless screenshots of himself from his jail cell? Yeah, he's taking topless screenshots and sending them to people. That's what Alec Murdoch's doing. Yeah, he's got his little fan club. It's so sad. So sad. Right, I'm just going to play a couple more minutes of the prosecutor just to wrap up, because I think I can't explain this in any other way. I just can't explain it in any other way. How wrong the defense are and how wrong people are who believe in this crap. I can't explain it in any other way than I've done numerous times now. Anyway, just a couple more minutes of the prosecutor.
Now, let me take a step back and go back to where I was going to start. I signed up for this hearing to do the IGG piece of the argument. These other things, they were kind of decided for me. This is why I turned around and looked at Bill earlier. But I will just say this. This idea that the court has to enter an order telling the state to do something it already has an obligation to do, I find offensive, frankly. I'm an officer of this court. We all are. We are doing exactly what we represent to this court. And so the idea that, well, why don't you just sign something that says you have to do this? We have told you we've done it, Judge. And so you should accept that rather than just sign an order telling us something that we already have to do. Now, moving on to the IGG stuff. I do need to correct something that I wrote in my brief, and I hate doing that. I don't like starting arguments that way. But this one was not of my own making. I said in the brief that this was an issue of first impression in Idaho. That is no longer true. Just last week, exactly 1 week ago, Judge Whitney in Canyon County made a decision on this exact issue. Now, unfortunately, there's no written product yet available, and so I'm not able to provide that to the court, but it's out there. So this is not an issue of first impression anymore. And as soon as we're able to get our hands on something written, we will supplement it.
Can you tell me what you said?
I can, Your Honor. My only hesitation there is that I personally was not in the courtroom, and so I've only heard secondhand what was said. And so I'm a little hesitant to characterize it as it came from someone else. Thank you, Your Honor. Now, the court has heard from, by my count, 4 different defense attorneys today. 4. And yet, not once have we talked about Rule 16.
There were 2 attorneys.
There were 2 attorneys plus 2 right here, Your Honor, that you heard from.
Oh, you're including the team.
Yes,
Okay.
who are both defense attorneys.
Yes.
And yet, none of them have mentioned Rule 16, which governs this dispute. Rule 16 governs discovery in Idaho. And what they have not been able to do is point to any subsection in Rule 16 that would require disclosure in this case. And I'd like to walk through some of those that they flagged in their briefing but didn't mention at all today. To start with, though, I want to go to subsection B10. And the reason I'm starting at the end of the list is because this helps us understand how Rule 16 functions. So B10 allows for disclosure by order of the court, and it says, on motion of the defendant showing substantial need in the preparation of the defendant's case for additional material or information not otherwise covered by this rule, and that the defendant is unable without undue hardship to obtain the substantial equivalent by other means, the court may order the additional material or information to be made available to the defendant. Clearly, what Rule 16 contemplates is that there is information that does not fall into any of these discrete buckets that could potentially still be relevant to the case. But if that's the situation, then they're supposed to make a motion and show what the rule requires. They haven't even tried to do that. But it also tells us that it's got to fit into one of these buckets. You got to be able to plug it in there. So let's look at the buckets. First, they cite subsection A, mandatory disclosure of evidence and material by the prosecution. And I won't read the whole thing because it's a rather lengthy paragraph. But in there, it refers specifically to material or information in the prosecuting attorney's possession or control. Now, as to all the work the FBI has done, as I represented in the brief, because again, I'm an officer of the court, this is not in the state's possession. The FBI has it in their possession. And, you know, it's been a real pleasure working with Bill over the last few months, but even he is limited in his power, and he does not control the Federal Bureau of Investigation. So that subsection just doesn't apply. Moving on, if you look at B.
Would the FBI pay order from the court?
Let me make one thing absolutely clear, and that is I am not in any way authorized to speak on behalf of the FBI. I don't know the answer to that, Your Honor. I can give you the legal answer, which is the FBI is not required to respond to orders of state courts. They are a separate sovereign. That I'm not implying that they would not. I'm just saying it's a legal matter. So what would this process look like if there were an order for us to produce this information? Well, we would then go to the FBI and we would submit what's called a TUI letter. And a TUI letter is a formal request for information in the possession of the federal government to us. And then their lawyers get involved, and we all know when lawyers get involved, stuff happens. So I can't say for sure what would happen. I can't speak for the FBI. I'm just making the point that this information is not in the possession or control of the prosecuting attorney.
And what I will say regarding that is even if the FBI turned over everything that they have in relation to the building of Brian's family tree that they did for the IGG process, even the FBI, and I'll refer you back to the US Department of Justice, even the FBI does not have in their possession, I'll read it again, It's important to note that personal genetic information is not transferred, retrieved, downloaded, or retained by genetic genealogy service users, including law enforcement, during the automated search and comparison process. Even the FBI does not have access to some of the information that the defense is trying to claim that it needs to properly represent Brian Kohberger. They do not have access to it. They can't get it. They don't have it. Now, the prosecutor goes on to talk about other aspects of Rule 16. I did a video about Rule 16 a while ago. Rule 16 is basically the part of the Idaho Code which tells the court what evidence has to be legally turned over as part of the discovery and what bits it doesn't. And one of the important things that it doesn't allow is the giving away of people's names, such as the relatives of Brian Kohberger, who just happened to come up in a family tree search. That's one of the things they are not legally required to turn over. And there was a long correspondence between the prosecution and defense somewhere in the court records, explaining, going through word for word, what they did not need to turn over and what they could not have access to. This was all written down in the court record months ago, and yet the defense still have not given any concrete information as to what parts of Rule 16 the prosecution are actually breaking. It's an absolute nonsense. It really is. It really is. There is no prosecutorial misconduct that I can see that's available in the court records that has ever been written. The defense are not even claiming prosecutorial misconduct. They're just nitpicking, just like they nitpicked about some of the forms weren't completed properly. One of the grand jurors hadn't signed their name on the form. One of them ticked the wrong box on the form. It's exactly the same thing they're doing with this DNA. They're nitpicking. They are nitpicking, and it does not wash. It might wash with some people on the internet, on the site previously known as Twitter. It might wash even with some internet lawyers who don't understand DNA. But it does not wash with me, and I hope that the judge realizes. I hope the judge realizes what they are doing. He certainly realized what they're doing in relation to the grand jury and, trying to delay the proceedings because of this clerical error in the grand jury questionnaires. He's not gone for that. He's just told them basically to piss off, obviously in a much nicer way than I've just done. But the DNA, he's going to have to go away and think about it and consult. He's taking it on advisement. He'll go away and consult. He'll do his own research. He's heard the arguments from the defense witnesses. But unfortunately, those witnesses have just spent an entire day of that judge's time and the court's time talking around points that are not even relevant. And that is so sad. That is so sad that the justice process has stooped to this level. From the defense's side, that they stooped to this level. But obviously it's in their best interest to do so, to try and bamboozle the judge. And I just hope that he isn't bamboozled and that he realizes that this is just hot air and more bluster. What? Michelle hasn't said I don't know once tonight. Why? I do say that I don't know a lot when I'm talking about Summer Wells. I say I don't know. I have no idea what's happened to Summer Wells. That's why I talk theoretically so much. None of us have any idea what happened to Summer Wells. But I absolutely can tell you in relation to this content, I can absolutely tell you 100% the defense are wrong and there is absolutely no prosecutorial misconduct in this case so far. I understand DNA. I don't call myself an expert in genealogy or DNA. I could do. I don't. I choose not to. But yeah. So I hope that I've got the point across. I hope I have finally got the point across about DNA. The SDR testing and SNP testing are completely different. They are not comparable. You cannot compare the results of a SNP test with the results of an SDR test. You can't compare them. They are completely different tests. So the prosecutor there is absolutely correct when he said these cannot be compared. And if the defense wanted to, they have Brian's DNA, they could do a SNP test themselves, they could build a family tree themselves, and they get to exactly the same results that the FBI did. They could get to exactly the same results because the DNA would be tested by whatever lab they sent it to in exactly the same way, because the same SNPs, the same single polymorph, the same single nucleotide polymorphisms are tested regardless of which lab that sample is sent to. Because if they tested all different SNPs, there would be no way that you could compare one sample against another. The entire genetic genealogy industry would fall apart. There's a standard way that SNP testing is done. The defense could do this and they could get the sample, they could get the sample tested, they could get a SNP profile and they could build their own family tree. The reason why they're not going to is because they know deep down in their cold, stony hearts that the result of that would be Brian Kohberger. So there we go. So yes, October 2nd at the moment, the court docket hasn't been changed. That Brian's trial starts on October the 2nd. There hasn't been a stay or a delay in the proceedings. Jury selection will start the week before October the 2nd, which will be, I don't know, the late stage in September. There is a hearing for some, I think it's the first week in September. I can't remember the date off the top of my head, but there is another hearing that is going to happen before jury selection starts, and then they'll have to do a pre-trial hearing. So there's still time for the defense to come back with even more nonsense to try to get the judge to delay the trial. Yeah, it's not far away. Yeah, it's not far away. We're what now? The 19th of August. So yeah, about 6 weeks. About 6 weeks. So they do have the chance still to try to delay the trial, and it could well be that they're successful. It could well be. I'd be surprised, to be honest, if it does start on the 2nd of October. But as we currently stand right now, the judge has denied a stay in proceedings as of right now. What's going to happen at the next motions hearing? Who knows? Who knows? Why has the judge not told them to do what? I don't know what you're referring to there. Oh, I think the prosecutors are ready. The prosecutors are ready. Whether the defense is ready is another matter. They're definitely going to try. Yeah, they're definitely going to try. Jury selection. For the Murdoch case, jury selection went on for a while, didn't it? That was quite lengthy. Was it Murdoch or was it Stoke? Yeah, they're anything from 2 days up to 5 days. Then it didn't take that long, jury selection. I mean, they can choose to take the pool of jurors from a wider pool than just Latar County, and both sides might agree that that would be beneficial. I don't know. Oh, you were summoned to a jury. Hey. I've been a juror on a murder trial. It's one of the most fascinating things I've ever done. It's up there. It's up there in my top 10 best things. Not that you know, the murder of a defenseless old man was something to be enjoyed, but the whole process of actually being on the jury was fascinating. So, woo. They're going to call up 1,000 potential jurors. Wow, that's a lot. Yeah, that's why they might just widen the pool. Like for the Delphi case, they're not moving the trial, but they are going to take the jurors from 2 other counties so that they get a wider potential jury pool. So it's easier to get, you know, an unbiased 12 plus however many alternates they choose to decide. That's right. Yeah. Murdoch's case was pretty problematic because of the influence that the Murdoch family had, not just in the county that the trial was set in, but, you know, in the area generally. Not as far as we know. The venue is going to be the same in Latah County. They've not requested, neither side has requested a change of venue as of yet, but they could request that the jury pool is wider than just Latah County, and I suspect that they might choose to do that. I do as well. I think it would be useful to widen the jury pool. Yeah. Oh, I don't think the judge can decree to the defense to do things themselves. It's up to them. He could make a suggestion. He could turn around and say, well, why don't you just do it yourself? But he can't force them to do it. He can't tell them they must do it. If I was the judge, I'd turn around and make a smart ass comment like that. If you want it, do it yourself. That's true. They were all there, weren't they? Police buddies, banking buddies, lawyer buddies. Yeah, it was a difficult one. That one. Fascinating. I watched every minute of the Murdoch trial. Every minute. Yeah, there is an episode of Crime Stories Sunday tomorrow. I will show you. So on my second channel, which is Michelle Walks. So I do have another channel for anybody who likes this channel and wants some extra content. I cover a wide range of cases over there. There is an episode of Crime Stories Sunday tomorrow. That's 8 p.m. UK time. So if you look at the scheduler here, it will tell you what time that is in your local time. So it's 8 p.m. UK time. So whatever that is in your time. So it's going to be 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific, I think. Whatever that is in your local time, it will tell you right there. And the case is Mary Ann Cotton. The serial killer, Mary Ann Cotton. Oh, sorry. Hold on a minute. What's going on here? Oh, I know why. There we go. So, sorry, I wasn't sharing the right screen there. So there, it tells you what time it is in your local time. So Mary Ann Cotton, The Rotten Tale of Mary Ann Cotton. So it's a premiere, so it means that there is a live chat. It's a recorded video, but it's a live chat. So join me if you like crime stories. Then join me tomorrow, 8 p.m. UK time, whatever that is in your local time, for the horrible case of the serial killer Mary Ann Cotton. Yeah. I've actually got 2 more Crime Stories Sundays researched. So I just have to record them and get them uploaded. So I'm going to do, probably going to be one next week. You know, I don't do them weekly anymore because they do take a lot of work, take a lot of research, and it's the time factor. I do love doing them. It's just the time factor. So yeah, if you're into crime stories, especially the old ones, this is from the 19th century, then come along and take part in the chat, and I answer questions while the video's running. So yeah, right, I'm going to go. I did say that I wasn't going to stay on here longer than 2 hours, and I've been on for 2 hours and 16 minutes. So I'm going to go. So thank you all for keeping me company this afternoon. Hopefully the DNA thing makes more sense to you. I hope it does. I can't describe it any other way than I've done. I really can't, but anyway, there we are. So thank you to the mods as always, and thank you for the donations. Welcome to the new members. Thank you to those who gifted memberships, and sorry if I missed any gifted memberships because I didn't have YouTube up, and StreamYard doesn't show me when someone gifts memberships. So anyway, all right guys, I shall see you tomorrow for a recorded video. So Sunday tomorrow. So no, there won't be a live stream. It will be a recorded video, and then the premiere of Crime Stories Sunday Mary Ann Cotton at 8 p.m. UK time over on Michelle Walks. All right guys, see you tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your day.